Hi, it's Paul Duvall. I'm a founder of Stelligent and an AWS DevTools hero. Now that we're in the final week of reInvent 2020, I thought I'd do a brief video recap of the DevSecOps-related announcements that I found worth looking into so far. In particular, those features that help to significantly accelerate speed and safety of deploying software to end users. So since AWS reInvent was 100% virtual this year, it was remarkably different for me, and I'm sure you as well. And as a result, I got opportunities to consume more content than I typically do at reInvent. But this came at the cost of missing out on opportunities to meet with new people and those that I typically see every year at this time. Now, the nice thing is that more people from around the world got an opportunity to learn, but all that said, I hope we're in person in Las Vegas this time next year. Keep in mind that when AWS announces a new service or feature, they quickly iterate on that service or feature based on regular customer feedback. So what you see now can vastly improve over the coming months and years. So this video recap will be followed up with a more detailed blog post and podcast interview in January 2021. So come back here for more updates. So initially, I'm going to go through a list of 8 service and feature announcements. I'm going to do this in alphabetical order because it's really still too early to tell what the effect of these announcements are going to be. I haven't used a number of, pretty much most of the service. Some are in preview, some haven't yet been fully released. I have messed around with a few, but I'm also going to be following up these 8 announcements with 5 honorable mentions. And I might be modifying this list after some of the service and feature announcements from this week, including Werner Vogel's keynote. And this will be reflected in that blog post in January. So let's get started. So the first one I want to talk about is Amazon CodeGuru. So this was actually announced at reInvent 2019. And CodeGuru is a machine learning powered service that helps you automate code reviews and then find your most expensive code. And it supports GitHub and Code Commit. What it does is it provides automated comments and pull requests for builders to review and approve. And it helps ensure that your code adheres to AWS best practices and concurrency issues, non-thread safe classes and correct handling, database connections, unsanitary inputs, things like that. The other feature in CodeGuru is known as the CodeGuru Profiler, which identifies the most expensive lines of code. Now, so the first notable CodeGuru announcement at reInvent 2020 is that CodeGuru now supports the Python programming language. So this means that it supports Java, which was announced at launch last year in 2019, and then Python now. So AWS also announced the release of Code Quality Detector within CodeGuru, and this identifies code across 5 different dimensions. The first being the method source lines of code, second being method cyclomatic complexity, then method fan out, class fan out, and then lastly class cohesion. Lastly, CodeGuru announced the support for security detectors, which identifies 4 categories of code security issues. That includes AWS API security best practices, Java crypto library best practices, secure web applications, and AWS security best practices. Next service announcement, this is a new service announcement, and that is Amazon DevOps Guru. So this is currently in preview, and what DevOps Guru does is it applies machine learning just like CodeGuru does, but in this case to application performance and availability. So the machine learning models are based on years of experience from Amazon running tens of thousands of applications at scale. So DevOps Guru regularly looks for anomalous behaviors such as increased latency, error rates, resource constraints that could lead to possible service outages or disruption. Since DevOps Guru can be run at all times, it can regularly report on anomalous behavior through its dashboard and through notifications. It provides both reactive and proactive insights along with mean time to recovery of CloudFormation stacks. So with proactive insights, for example, you can be made aware of issues such as memory utilization before they become a problem that affect your end users. So whereas there are numerous ways to assess the operational health of facets of your AWS accounts, for example, using things like config and CloudWatch Trusted Advisor and others, what DevOps Guru does is it focuses on your application and infrastructure health by looking at how those applications are running in production. So the next feature I want to talk about is the Amazon ECS Deployment Circuit Breaker, which also provides automatic rollback deployments. And so Martin Fowler describes what was initially popularized by Nigel Nygaard of a circuit breaker. So a circuit breaker monitors for a certain number of failures, and once it reaches a certain threshold, it trips that circuit breaker. And so this new circuit breaker functionality runs on the ECS schedule or the orchestrator. It runs at that level, and it supports both EC2 or Fargate back tasks. It enables quick discovery of a failed deployment, and it allows you to automatically roll back to a previously deployed version. So let's say you have a pipeline and deploys some new changes, the task gets it, runs it, and then it starts to churn. So it's not working. It can sometimes take some time to register that the deployment has failed. So for example, a CloudFormation stack might take hours in some cases to indicate that the deployment failed. And so with the new ECS circuit breaker, the way this works is with anything that's running the ECS scheduler, it's going to include the circuit breaker functionality. So this includes, like if you're running it through CloudFormation or ECS console, the CLI, or even Terraform, SDK, the CDK, whatever. So AWS basically added some logic into the ECS control plane, the orchestrator, to determine failures and then trip that breaker. And so it determines this based on the size of your deployment and some other factors. And what this allows you to do is reduce or eliminate any of maybe the custom logic that you might have in place that you might have had prior to implementing this feature. So if you have that in place already, you might move over to this more automated way of tripping the breaker and then also rolling back the deployment. So if you want more information on this, you can see the video on YouTube from AWS announcing the release of the ECS Deployment Circuit Breaker feature. So next one I wanted to cover is Amazon SageMaker pipelines. This is something that Stelligent has actually done for a number of enterprise customers using SageMaker and CodePipeline, a number of other tools as well. And so this is built for both the data scientist or data scientist team and ops teams. And what it allows you to do is get quicker and more useful feedback when you're building and tuning your machine learning models. It's integrated with into SageMaker and into SageMaker Studio. So it ensures that only approved models get deployed to production. And SageMaker Pipelines contains source control repositories under the hood, so running things like code commit. It allows you the ability to run experiments and tests. It groups your models, allows you to define and access your model endpoints, and then configure its settings. So SageMaker provides a number of example projects, open source and available, to define these SageMaker pipelines. What it does is it launches CloudFormation stacks and a code pipeline under the hood. But you can find all the status to everything associated with the pipeline in SageMaker Studio. So you can just go to one place, but at the same time you can also look at the stacks that get generated and the pipeline that gets generated as well. So it's SageMaker Pipelines is handling everything from the data processing to the training, the model evaluation, the model registration, the manual approval, incorporating that into the automated workflow, deploying to the endpoint. So if you want to see more information on this, there's a nice YouTube video on Amazon SageMaker Pipelines, and the announcement, it walks through all this. And it was put together by developer advocate at AWS, Julian Simon. Next feature, next service actually is the AWS Audit Manager. And so this was announced during Steve Schmidt's leadership session on security. So AWS Audit Manager is a fully managed service that continuously collects data to help prepare for audits. And it uses established frameworks for PCI and HIPAA and others. So essentially, it can help you always be in an audit-ready state, whether it's an internal or an external audit. So with AWS Audit Manager, you can configure an assessment. When you create this assessment, you can choose from one of the industry frameworks like CIS benchmarks, AWS best practices, PCI, HIPAA, and so forth. At the time of this recording, there are currently over 29 supported frameworks you can incorporate into these assessments with AWS Audit Manager. So you can then choose the AWS service or services that you wish to run the audit on, and there's over 100 services right now that are already supported with Audit Manager. So sometime after this, you'll be able to go back into Audit Manager and then see a list of the compliance checks along with there's an evidence folder that indicates why that particular check may have failed. You can also generate an assessment report that you can give to an auditor. And then on that same day that AWS announced Audit Manager, they also announced the integration with AWS Security Hub with Audit Manager. So definitely take a look at that. So I had pre-event about a week before reInvent. AWS CloudFormation announced CloudFormation Modules. So CloudFormation Modules are another way to extend CloudFormation. So if you include things like transforms, custom resources, macros, the CDK with constructs and resource providers, things like that, those are other ways to extend CloudFormation. But the difference with modules is that you're able to define a template or templates that adhere to your best practices within your organization, and then use these modules in your CloudFormation templates without needing to write Lambda or a resource provider in order to extend CloudFormation. You can typically generate these modules using the CloudFormation. That's really what AWS recommends in terms of best practice, but using the CloudFormation CLI, the CFN CLI. So next new service is AWS Network Firewall. So this is now generally available, and you can think of it as a firewall that runs on top of all of your VPCs and across a number of accounts, both handling things like ingress and egress. It provides a high availability and scalability, which also means you don't have to think about patching and managing the underlying instances of the network firewall. It works with AWS Firewall Manager to centrally manage firewall rules across existing accounts and VPCs. It provides real-time firewall activity monitoring via Amazon CloudWatch metrics. And it comes with a rules engine allowing you to create custom rules, like checking for IP addresses and ports, protocols, domains, and pattern matching. The next feature is AWS Proton. So AWS describes Proton as the first fully managed application deployment service for containers and serverless applications. Platform engineering teams can use Proton to connect and coordinate all the different tools needed for infrastructure provisioning, code deployments, monitoring, and updates. So Proton, what it does is it provides the ability to create these pre-baked deployment patterns via templates. It's really geared towards enterprise teams that might have a platform team, or these come in many names, but these are basically centralized teams that are managing the infrastructure for hundreds or thousands of teams in a number of cases. And this platform team might provide common patterns for deployment, and then in the case of Proton, serverless and container-based applications in particular. So Stelligent has helped enterprise customers implement similar approaches, but in more of a custom manner with something called pipeline factories. And so basically there were pipelines that generate pipelines for tens or hundreds of teams. So Proton provides this type of capability that helps customers define these templates that define the structure for how to apply these patterns on top of existing AWS services, such as AWS Code Pipeline, AWS Service Catalog, and AWS CloudFormation, among what will be many other service integrations. So in the short term, I think people will likely be confused by all the seemingly different options for deployment, thinking that Proton is yet another one of these. However, I expect, or at least my hope is, that Proton helps to reduce some of this complexity, because in some of the enterprise deployments that we've seen, there is a need to really codify the general guardrails and best practices and behavior and put that into code. And so I hope that with Proton, organizations will be able to do that in a more truly codified manner, and then be able to utilize all these existing AWS services. So those were the top 8 services and features I want to talk about. So now I'll talk about 5 honorable mentions. So I'll talk about Amazon EventBridge. EventBridge now provides server-side encryption. And then there's also an integration with Systems Manager Change Calendar that integrates with EventBridge now to enable automated action based on calendar state changes. Next one is Amazon VPC Reachability Analyzer. This uses, at least ostensibly, uses automated reasoning, much like Network Accessibility Analyzer, and then some of the other config rules that are baked in into AWS config. But what this does is it looks for, as organizations define VPCs, it looks for different ways that they could be reached, either ingress or egress, and notes any areas of vulnerability. So AWS config now supports organization-wide resource data aggregation in delegated administrator accounts. And so this is one of the themes that we're seeing more and more. You'll see this throughout some of the security tools and tools like config, as well as more and more tools are supporting AWS organizations, because it's not just one single AWS account. It's ultimately numerous tens, hundreds, thousands of AWS accounts you need to manage. You can do that through organizations, but you need to have those services be able to integrate with organizations, so that you can define it in one place essentially, and then have it available in numerous AWS accounts throughout your organization. Another feature I wanted to mention is code signing in AWS Lambda. And so this is a trust and integrity control for AWS Lambda to ensure that your code has digital signatures associated with it, so you can trust that code. And then the last service or feature I want to talk about is with AWS Service Catalog, and that's the AppRegistry, where you can register your applications within this catalog, and be able to track that much like you would your own service catalog. So those are the main services and features that I found noteworthy. If you want to stay tuned for my blog post next month, I'll be getting into and providing more recommendations around these. And there are actually thousands, or at least 1,000 plus AWS training sessions as a part of reInvent. So I'll make some notes and make some recommendations of some of the sessions that I think are most interesting when it comes to DevSecOps on AWS. And so stay tuned. Thanks a lot.